All right, let's get started, folks. I'm going to call the Subcommittee on Energy and Water Development of the Appropriations Committee to order. With us today is Secretary Chris Wright, who's going to talk to us about the proposed Trump skinny budget, if you will. I'm just going to have a couple of preliminary comments, and then I'm going to turn to the vice chair of the entire committee and the ranking member of the subcommittee to make remarks. Look, we all know about the portfolio of the Department of Energy. It's a smorgasbord, everything from nuclear weapon stockpiles to research to supercomputing to artificial intelligence. There are two things, Mr. Secretary, I want to point out in my opening statement that got my attention. The spending at your department, this is not your fault, but it's unsustainable. It's simply unsustainable. If you take a look and compare the current budget of the Department of Energy, just go back a few years to fiscal year 2021. In fiscal year 2021, the department's budget was roughly $61 billion. Today, it's roughly $160 billion. That's a what, 161% increase? That's pretty dramatic. And I know your proposed skinny budget is addressing some of that. I hope we can address the spending with a scalpel, not a meat axe, but we're going to have to address it. I'll also point out, let's see that other chart. The Inspector General, you've probably read the report, Chris, but the report came out in November of 2024. The Inspector General identified $1 billion in what it called wasteful spending, unsupported spending, or fraudulent spending. That's a lot of taxpayer money. So I'm looking forward to this today. I'm a pretty much of an all of the above energy type guy. I will support any form of energy that is that's affordable, that's efficient, that's accessible. That includes renewables. In my judgment, President Biden's administration concentrated almost exclusively, I should say, on renewables. We've spent a lot of money. I don't see that we've gotten the results. The average electricity bill in America for the average American family over the past 4 years is up 28%. That's the first thing they care about. And we've got to address it. And I hope we can today, Mr. Secretary, talk very specifically about what programs are working and what programs aren't. Because what has happened in the past, since I've been on this committee, is we get together as a subcommittee, we get our top line numbers, our staffs go off on the Democratic staffs and the Republican staffs, go off and negotiate. And at least on my side of the aisle, the staff comes back and said, good news, spending's only going to go up 6%. Well, those days are gone, as far as I'm concerned. That's just not acceptable to me. Not when you've had 161% increase. And with that, I'll turn to the vice chair of the Appropriations Committee and the ranking member of the Energy and Water Development Subcommittee, my good friend, Senator Patty Murray.
Thank you very much, Senator Kennedy. Looking forward to working with you on this.
Same
again.
here.
I am pleased to serve as the ranking member of this important subcommittee, and I do hope we can continue our track record of writing bipartisan spending bills that make the crucial investments in our communities that we need. You know, DOE's work is really far-reaching, is major implications for how much families spend on energy bills, on the reliability of our energy grid, whether we lead the world in clean energy, AI, quantum computing, and our national security and our nuclear waste cleanup program. In my home state of Washington, as you know, we see all of this firsthand at the Bonneville Power Administration, which provides power to families across our region, at the Pacific Northwest National Lab, which is pioneering cutting-edge research, and at Hanford, where we have the biggest nuclear cleanup site in the country and a moral and legal obligation that we can never shortchange. So we must give the programs DOE manages their due in terms of funding and in terms of oversight necessary to make sure that funding actually gets to our communities. But I believe those goals are in jeopardy because of some of your actions over the last few months, like a truly sweeping funding freeze, unprecedented contract cancellations, mass staffing reductions, and uncertainty that is hurting communities across our country. Now, Secretary Wright, my colleagues and I have been pressing you for information on staffing, on funds signed into law you are holding up or straight up canceling, and more. And I've only received 2 responses so far, both of them yesterday, clearly to get ahead of today's hearing. And response, I have to say, is being charitable because you didn't really provide any answers in those. Last week, you told the House you have ignored basic inquiries from lawmakers because you are too busy. And you mentioned you don't want to spend time on false premises. So I thought we could save some time today by debunking a few of those false premises. It is false for you to say less than 1,000 people have left since you took over. We know over 3,500 DOE employees have taken the so-called buyout that you offered, and we know you fired 500 more. It is false for you to say no contracts have been canceled when you have plainly canceled electric vehicle and low-income energy assistance grants in Colorado, one example. And it is false for you to say there are no unpaid invoices when we have heard from organizations still waiting on payments, including hydrogen hubs, which have unpaid invoices. Now, in addition to ignoring requests from Congress, your FY25 spend plan, required by law, is completely inadequate. That is really critical, Mr. Secretary. It is a critical document for us to understand how you are spending or how you are blocking or canceling billions of dollars Congress, all of us, provided for critical projects across the country. I've heard you say you are merely conducting a review, as if that somehow makes it okay. Call it whatever you want. The bottom line is the money is not moving. And as a former businessman, you know perfectly well that uncertainty alone has a massive cost. Jobs are being lost because of your actions. Private investment in critical energy projects is being canceled, delayed, threatened, to the tune of $71 billion so far this year. And as electric prices hit record highs, you are halting progress on investments that would lower people's bills. Meanwhile, you are letting thousands of critical staff go, encouraging folks to leave, with no regard for if they do their work well or if their work is important. I still don't know how you could do something as crazy as try to fire Bonneville Power Administration workers in the name of efficiency. Those are literally people who keep the lights on, and they're not even paid by taxpayer dollars. Now, I know that eventually you reverse those firings, but the fact that they happened at all was really, to me, a first in a parade of red flags. Now, we are here today to talk about another red flag. That is your budget that completely guts the non-defense half of your mission. Overall, you want to slash $20 billion from DOE's science and energy programs. Your budget proposes ripping 75% out of the energy efficiency and renewable energy program and shuttering important clean energy and manufacturing programs. I don't know who's telling you people want to pay higher electric bills. Your budget slashes $1.1 billion from the Office of Science. Who is telling you that we should cede ground to China in the race for innovation and lay off scientists at our national labs? Your budget cuts $15 billion from programs we created in the bipartisan infrastructure law, hydrogen hubs, battery storage, advanced manufacturing, supply chains, and other programs to lower our energy costs. Who told you we don't want those manufacturing jobs? Who told you we don't want to strengthen our energy production and reduce our dependence on foreign oil? Well, here's what I will tell you. If we were to follow through with this disastrous budget, the only energy that we would save is from the lights that go out at factories across the country. Those lights are going to go off as China swoops in to take the lead in the technologies that will define the 21st century. I don't see any efficiency in this budget, but I do see a heavy cost. And that's the cost you're going to pass on to our constituents in the form of higher electric bills, gas bills, and more power outages. Not to mention the cost when manufacturing moves elsewhere, and we have to pay Trump's absurd tariffs for technology we could and should be making right here. Or to the cost to our country, discoveries we could be making here, jobs we could be creating right here, goods we could be making here and selling across the world. Instead, it feels like you want to gift wrap the future and hand it to China. Your budget also, by the way, flat funds the Hanford cleanup. That has serious repercussions. They recently finalized milestones they have to meet on the high-level waste mission. Flat funding means the only way to hit those targets is to pull funding from other priorities, which would have ripple effects for workers carrying out critical projects across the site and ultimately would delay remediation along the Columbia River. That is unacceptable. We cannot rob Peter to pay Paul. Mr. Secretary, I know you talk about energy abundance, but talk is cheap. Doing that work actually takes real investments. I think you know that. Investments you are now ripping to shreds. So I personally want to see less talk and more money getting out the door the way Congress wrote and intended. You know, there is common ground in this space. I know we found it before. The very last bill Chair Kennedy and I wrote together passed out of this committee unanimously. And I want to see us do it again because this is genuinely important work. Now, before I conclude, I would be remiss if I did not address the outrageously corrupt news we got last week on the Army Corps work plan. This administration is ripping away hundreds of millions of dollars from projects that were in the House bill and in the Senate Energy and Water FY25 bills, and funding other projects with that money that were not funded in any bill that we approved. This includes scrapping funds for the Howard Hansen Dam in Washington State. This is a vital project. It has to get done. I want you to know I'm going to keep working with you, Mr. Chairman, to get that done because this committee and the subcommittee have come a long way together to fund these vital projects to communities across our country. And I know no member appreciates any administration playing games with communities for political reasons, as is the case with that work plan that was released last week. It is brazen abuse, pure and simple, and I will keep digging into how that decision was made, demanding answers and speaking out about this and fighting for my state of Washington. Now, before I turn it over back to you, Chair Kennedy, I do want to end by recognizing Doug Clapp. He was my former clerk, a longtime staffer on this subcommittee, and a staffer in my personal office before that. Doug started on this committee in 2007, 2 decades ago, and has left his mark on our nation's laws time and again, championing oversight and good governance, advancing environmental cleanup work, including at the Hanford site, fighting for and securing the vital investments this subcommittee makes, as well as working in my personal office on the Wild Sky Wilderness Act and many other issues important to my constituents. He was someone who understood that when we work together, we can make powerful investments that show government can do good in people's lives. I am really grateful for his years of service. I want to wish him the best as he starts his next chapter. I'm also grateful he left behind not just a strong legacy, but a great team and a subcommittee so well prepared to continue this work, and I thank all of them. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Secretary, we'll turn to you next. I can assure you we'll give you plenty of time, in addition to your opening statement, to to answer any questions or any charges from this committee. I was delighted when the president appointed you. When we were talking before the committee began, I'm not kidding, I am reading your book, and it's fascinating. Some of it I don't understand. I may have to call you and get you to explain it to me, but it's very accessible. And when the president appointed you, I was so excited that we would have someone running the Department of Energy who has such a deep background in the subject. And with that, the floor is now yours. Tell us what we need to know, Mr. Secretary, and welcome to all of your staff. I assume they're all sitting there on the front row.
Yes, yeah, great thanks to the team behind me that'll be here for after the meeting too. If we've got questions or follow-up, Senator Murray, if you have unpaid invoices, please bring them to us right now. We pay our bills. I'm not aware of any unpaid invoices. If you know of some, please deliver us.
We have the receipts.
Please deliver them and we'll take care of them. We pay our bills, we follow the law. Thank you, Senator. Yeah, energy is a lifelong mission and passion for me, and nothing will change that. And I'm thrilled to be here in this position. So Chairman Kennedy, Ranking Member Murray, and members of the committee, it is an honor to appear before you today as Secretary of Energy to discuss the President's fiscal year 2026 budget request for the Department of Energy. I want to commend this committee for its long-standing commitment to energy policy and the mission of the department. Energy is the backbone of civilization. It is the essential catalyst of human progress, enabling everything we do. Everything, from the lights in our homes, the heat in our homes, the process heat in our factories, and the innovation in our national laboratories. I've dedicated my life to increasing access to energy and bettering human lives, and I'm thrilled to carry my work forward at the Department of Energy. My priorities for the department are clear: to unleash a golden era of American energy dominance, strengthen our national security, and lead the world in innovation. A reliable and abundant energy supply is the foundation of a strong and prosperous nation. When America leads in energy, we lead in prosperity, security, and human flourishing. America has a historic opportunity to secure our energy systems, lead the world in scientific and technological innovation, maintain and strengthen our weapons stockpile, and meet Cold War legacy waste commitments. The Department of Energy will advance these critical missions while cutting red tape, increasing efficiency, and unleashing innovation, and ensuring we are better stewards of taxpayer dollars. The President's fiscal year 26 budget will ensure taxpayer resources are allocated appropriately and cost-effectively. This budget will return DOE to its core mission of advancing energy innovation and global competitiveness through research and development. We will invest DOE's resources and in sources and technologies that support affordable, reliable, and secure energy, and provide a return on investment for the American taxpayers. Achieving this vision means fully leveraging the resources that have powered our country for generations. The United States is blessed with an abundance of coal, oil, and natural gas, and the Trump administration is committed to using them to meet growing energy needs of the American people. Every one of these resources was unleashed through the world-changing power of American innovation. Our national labs are the engine that drives research and development to expand our energy dominance. When it comes to our national labs, we are undeniably capable of doing more with less. We can both increase efficiency and drive innovation. We will prioritize research that supports true technological breakthroughs and maintains America's global competitiveness. We are also taking steps to accelerate innovation in commercial nuclear development. America must lead the commercialization of affordable and abundant nuclear energy. DOE is working to advance the rapid deployment of next-generation nuclear technology, including small modular reactors. I am proud to report that we have officially ended the previous administration's reckless pause on LNG export permits and are returning to regular order for reviewing and approving new permits. DOE will also work to replenish the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, a national asset that protects our security in times of crisis. We are advancing President Trump's pledge to lower the cost of living and expand consumer choice for all Americans by right-sizing DOE's approach to home efficiency standards and regulations. This month, DOE proposed the elimination or reduction of 47 regulations, the largest deregulatory effort in history. Once finalized, these actions are projected to save the American people approximately $11 billion while restoring consumer freedom and lowering costs. The responsible stewardship and modernization of the nation's nuclear weapon systems is paramount for the Department of Energy and this administration. DOE is focused on addressing critical upgrades for the U.S. nuclear stockpile and maintaining our engine powerhouses for submarines and aircraft carriers. Both tasks will become even more crucial in the next few years. Our nuclear innovation is a nation that began with the Manhattan Project, and the next Manhattan Project is clearly AI. DOE has a significant role to play in driving AI innovation for scientific discovery and national security. Our agency has world-class, high-performance computing capabilities, including 4 of the world's top 10 supercomputers. Harnessing our energy potential to power global AI leadership while meeting growing energy demand will be the challenge of our time. But America doesn't back down from big challenges or big builds. As Secretary of Energy, I'm honored by the responsibility to help meet the American people's growing needs for energy and lead the world in energy development. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before the committee today.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Secretary, how many employees did the Department of Energy have when you took over?
Just around 16,000 government employees.
How many does it have today?
A little under 16,000 today.
How much have you reduced it percentage-wise?
So far, only a relatively small amount. We are looking at larger reductions, and as Senator Murray mentioned, we have offered voluntary plans and programs for people to be compensated by the government as they transition to another career. We've done this slowly, carefully, with a lot of engagement with people, and while looking at how to restructure our department. So the ultimate reduction in workforce will be larger than it's been today, but today our payroll has barely moved.
Most entities in the private sector of the size of the Department of Energy know how to modernize and downsize, do they not?
It's essential to survival as a business. If you want to roll with changes in the marketplace and the business, you better be ready to change your organization.
Okay. I just read recently where Microsoft, one of the most successful companies in the world, is going to reduce its workforce by 6,000 employees. Do you think that's going to be the end of Microsoft?
No, it won't be the end of Microsoft. These are, I will say, these are the hardest things to do, whether it's in a company or a government agency. You know, these are people's lives, and our department is blessed with tremendous men and women who've made enormous contributions. But you're right, Senator Kennedy. We have to look at it critically and right size and align the organization to the missions and challenges of today.
Let me ask you a couple of specific questions, Mr. Secretary. As a result, we had a party around here under the Biden administration. And when you have a party, you have to pay the band when the party's over. As a result of the party, if you count the Inflation Reduction Act, which was the Green New Deal, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also part of the Green New Deal, the CHIPS and Science Act, your department got $99 billion in new appropriations, $30.5 billion in new authorizations, and loan authority of over $400 billion. How much of that $400 billion authority to loan money did the Department of Energy use?
Nearly $100 billion. Nearly $100 billion. Thank you for making the point that more money, as is shown in your graph and the numbers you quoted, and more people, that headcount in the department grew over 20% during those 4 years, our electricity output of the nation as a whole grew about 2%. And the cost per unit of electricity grew 28%.
Well, here's what
We didn't deliver results for all that.
here's what the Inspector General said about some of the loans. The Inspector General, these are the Inspector General's assessment, not mine. The Inspector General called many of these loans, quote, high risk. High risk. And he said that these loans were designed to promote innovation by financing projects, fine, not otherwise acceptable by private equity and investors. What does that mean? That means that the private sector wouldn't get near these projects with a 10-foot pole, would they? Only government would put up the money, wouldn't it?
That's correct.
For example, he found that DOE, under your predecessor, announced that it was going to make a $400 million loan. Actually, it wasn't a loan, it was a grant to 2 companies. They announced it. And then somebody pointed out to them that they were Chinese companies. They had to pull the grant back. Why are we loaning money? This is another issue brought out by the Inspector General. Why are we loaning $7.5 billion to Stellantis? They can't get a bank loan themselves. I mean, J.P. Morgan and Bank of America have been shoving money out the door for energy projects. Why did we loan $9.63 billion to Blue Oval? Why are we doing all of this? I'm gonna quickly give you an example. I had a gentleman, I'm not going to use any names, come into my office yesterday. He's from a very wealthy family in another country. He wants to build a solar manufacturing plant in America. He's putting up $1 billion. You know how much the American taxpayer is going to put up? $850 million. So he's going to get, thanks to the American taxpayer, $1 billion plant for $150 million to produce solar panels, which the world is awash in. This is unconscionable. And I hope you'll do something about it, Mr. Secretary. Now, at some point, we're going to get real specific about savings. And I'm going to expect you to get real specific with us. I don't want to not fund anything that's vital. But I'm tired of the spending porn. I'm tired of it.
I think you have good reason to be concerned with how monies have been deployed outside of the loan program office and for other assistance as well. And we'll come back to that, but I think your concern is well placed.
Vice Chair Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Wright, despite your claims to the contrary, more than 3,500 employees have taken the deferred resignation offer. That's about 20% of your staff. And we do know that you fired several hundred probationary employees as well. That has meant some offices are now gutted. There's nobody there. Others are in turmoil. I'll give you an example. The Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, which manages $20 billion in grants from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, lost more than 77% of its staff. It is going to be nearly impossible for that office to accomplish its basic functions, let alone oversee any massive and complex energy construction projects. And as I mentioned, your firings have been really arbitrary, even firing some of our grid operators and linemen at the Bonneville Power Administration, which are not paid for by taxpayer dollars. I know you scrambled to get those people back, and several weeks ago you said no more firings will occur at Bonneville. These positions, really, they're absolutely critical to the reliability of the grid in Washington State and the Pacific Northwest. Will you commit today to exempting BPA from your hiring freeze so they can bring back on staff mission-critical staff and keep the Northwest grid running?
We're very concerned about the power marketing agencies. They're critical to our country, Bonneville being one of them. We've been careful that their operations have not been disrupted. They were short-staffed when I arrived in this chair, and we will continue to treat them as the critical assets they are. Again, headcount is one input. It's an important input, but it's not the only input in running a successful business or a successful agency. And again, you brought up people that have provisionally elected to do a deferred resignation program. Many of them still have the option to decide whether they really are staying, whether they really are leaving. They are in transition.
Well,
we are engaged with them. They're not fired. They're not gone from the Department of Energy yet.
There are a lot of folks still on the payroll at the expense of the taxpayer. We are told that over $70 million worth, they are on the administrative leave now. They're at home. They're not working. They're not processing anything. They're not doing any work. And as a result, offices across the department are not able to function because those people aren't there, even though taxpayers are still saying, telling them to. But on BPA, just in terms of that, I do look forward to DOE hiring back sufficient staff. We've got to cover these critical responsibilities. Let me turn to the budget. President Trump's skinny budget really doubles down on the cuts that DOGE has made to the department. You propose cutting $2.5 billion from the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, 74% of the overall budget. That eliminates programs that reduce energy prices for businesses, for families. And on the one hand, you and the president say that you support U.S. dominance in energy, emerging technologies, but then on the other hand, you are proposing cutting over $1 billion in funding to the Office of Science. That really undermines critical research programs for AI, for fusion, for quantum computing, for nuclear energy, and critical minerals. Now, typically a new administration crafts a budget request that actually reflects their priorities. You talk a lot, I know, about lowering costs for consumers and creating this next Manhattan Project for AI, but it seems that this budget request includes across-the-board cuts to the very programs that would help you achieve those stated goals. So I want to get this straight. You are asking Congress to cut the budget for the Office of Science by more than $1 billion. That will help advance AI research and quantum computing?
It won't inhibit them at all. In fact, I do think on the margin it will help. Because, of course, all the things you listed, fusion, quantum computing, basic, fundamental advanced basic science, none of those things will be cut. The problem is the labs have drifted into things that are not fundamental basic science, that are political science. And that's just not the missions of the labs.
Do you have examples of those that you'd like to share with us?
We have a crazy range of things on climate change. There is science around climate change that I write about and have studied for 2 decades. There's real science there, but it's become a political game more than a real science game. That's not the business of the national labs, and of course we're going to shrink that activity. We're going to be smarter and more efficient, but none of the top priorities you mentioned are going to be touched at all.
Well, you talk about the importance.
In fact, they're going to be enhanced.
Okay, you talk about the importance of nuclear power and small modular reactors. Just yesterday, you said you were in favor of every incentive we can get from the federal government to restart this industry. Yet in your budget that you're proposing, you cut the Office of Nuclear Energy by $408 million. How are investors and companies supposed to have confidence in partnering with you when what you say and what your budget says are 2 different things?
Each individual line item does not indicate a policy. I think the nuclear industry is quite enthusiastic and quite confident they're going to have the best environment ever for commercial nuclear power under this administration, under my leadership of the DOE. What we're doing is mobilizing tens of billions of dollars of private capital using government.
Well, the private capital is counting on us to make that investment. Otherwise, we see them pull out. We've actually seen companies in the country now pulling out of projects because of the chaos in your department. As a businessman, you said that you should know more than anyone the importance of certainty. And when they see the chaos and they see them pulling back, then they're not going to invest their private money either.
If you can connect me with anyone in the nuclear space or fusion or any of the things you listed that's pulling back, I'd love to jump on the phone with them because I haven't met one. Not one. In fact, I felt exactly the opposite. The most efficient tool that the Department of Energy has to help the nuclear industry is the Loan Program Office. get high-quality equity money in front and bring government debt on these first few-of-a-kind reactors behind them, that's the way to get it done. It's not direct grant dollars, it's loan program
The
office
chairman is
dollars.
going to pull my mic in a second, and I do want to ask you a really critical question quickly. We're having a budget hearing today. We have not seen your full budget request. We need that in front of us. It is required. It is critical information. When are we going to see your full budget request?
I'm working with OMB right now to get that out as soon as we can. I understand your urgency.
Thank you.
Senator Britt.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Senator Britt, we were talking earlier, and I made the comment, I want to state it on the record, that you've got an automatic place in heaven for having to carry Senator Tuberville. Okay?
It's legendary right here.
I hope you're
Legendary.
listening, Senator Tuberville.
Legendary. Well, as the chair mentioned earlier, and I wasn't expecting that one, so that's some good stuff. Your department covers everything from basic research to advanced nuclear reactors to grid security. I mean, the work that you do affects Americans every single day. When we're looking at that, and this kind of piggybacks off of both of the questions that have been asked previously, but I want to talk about China and where they are specifically with their embrace of nuclear generation. When you look at the facts as they are, China is, I think, has at least 28 nuclear reactors that are in construction, which is about half of the construction of all nuclear reactors across the entire globe. We look at what they're doing. We know they're working to undermine us. To me, this is very similar to what we saw in the manufacturing space. They're using political and economic leverage to ultimately manipulate and get ahead. I think that is a mistake on a number of ways. I mean, if we turn a blind eye to that, I think it's critical that we look at this, particularly within the AI space, knowing that AI is not just an AI race, it is also an energy race, and we must win both. So my question to you is, what are your plans? What is the Trump administration's plans to win that race? And how do we make sure that you have the funds in the proper place to do that?
Fantastic, Senator Britt, and I agree very much with the assumptions. China is moving full speed ahead with nuclear. In fact, the most of reactors they're building is essentially a knockoff, a stealing of an American reactor technology, but they build them much cheaper and much faster. And they don't have the giant bureaucratic regulatory overhang we have in the United States. We need to get the NRC, in touch with physical reality. Grand Central Station in New York, our train station, could not be licensed as a nuclear reactor because its radiation's too high. We have standards that are just so expensive to meet.
Okay.
It makes everything slow. It makes everything expensive. We bring all sorts of regulatory uncertainty into that environment. So we are talking with commercial providers. We've offered up DOE lands. We've had tons of solicitations. Come build on our land. Mm-hmm. We'll be fast. We'll be efficient. We'll help you get going. We'll arrange creative incentives for you to build nuclear reactors in our space. I think we'll do it. The Loan Program Office is a key tool. We do need to make sure we have funding available in the Loan Program Office, because used judiciously, it's a way to leverage private capital to make things happen fast. If your equity investors behind that debt are the 6 hyperscalers in the United States, they're great credit. The American taxpayers are going to be paid back. Alternatively, in the last administration, the Loan Program Office in its 15-year history lent $43 billion. Wow. In the 76 days since Election Day to Inauguration Day of the new president, the previous administration lent or committed $93 billion. 2.5 times the 15-year total.
You're kidding me. Tell me that time frame again.
76 days from Election Day, when the Biden lost the presidential election, to President Trump's inauguration. In 76
That is absolute
days,
insanity.
they lent or committed $93 billion. So is there a reason I'm moving slow and I'm doing evaluations of projects? Yes, there's a very big reason.
Well, let me turn quickly in my remaining time, and thank you so much for doing that. We cannot cede this ground to China, and so thank you for making sure that we don't do that at all. In December of 2020, DOE selected a team led by Southern Company in Birmingham, Alabama, to lead the molten chloride reactor experiment, MCRE, in partnership with DOE. Developing this new type of nuclear reactor is transformational to that next generation nuclear energy, and that type of leadership that we need to see across our nation. The MCRE program is going to deliver the world's first fast spectrum salt reactor to support the administration's goal of unleashing American energy dominance and to achieve world leadership in nuclear energy. Further, MCRE is the first demonstration of a reactor technology that can revolutionize the commercial shipping industry and serving as a catalyst for restoring American maritime dominance throughout floating nuclear power plants and U.S.-flagged large commercial ships. So this project supports scalable, deployable, and transformational American nuclear energy. Given that strategic value associated with this critical advanced reactor demonstration project, will you commit to support this project and to continuing to work that it has successful reactor operation and will be executed during this administration?
A super exciting project. I can't commit today to any specific project because I very carefully assembled a team of people, of leaders that are evaluating honestly and objectively all of these projects and going full steam ahead on ones that deliver affordable, reliable energy and have a reasonable chance of success.
Well, good. I hope you will take a look at this. We're really proud of the work that's being done, and I think that you are going to be very pleased with what you see. And in my last few remaining seconds, I would just wanted to ask about grid security. So when you're looking at the chair and I, we live in Gulf Coast states, and so hurricane season is upon us. When we're looking at what's happening, with the grid, obviously making sure it's protected not only for natural disasters, but national security disasters. What are y'all doing to ensure that reliability and protection?
It's a key issue. It is a vulnerability of our country. Our grid is very distributed. A lot of it's very antiquated. It's very easy to attack our grid, and we are being attacked all the time. And I think there's more sophisticated attacks possible that have not been launched against us yet, but it could be an adversary waiting for the right time. In fact, one of the meetings I had right before coming here was with...
Land the plane for me, Mr. Secretary. We've got to move on here.
Yeah. I agree with the problem. We are working on it, including today.
Excellent. Thank you.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on that last topic, I'm very interested in a discussion on transformers at some point, large scale. But
yes.
Grid security... anyways, I wanted to share that in Wisconsin, we have seen the real impact of the Inflation Reduction Act. Over $5.3 billion in private investment has been announced, with nearly $3 billion already spent since the bill was enacted. We added over 4,500 jobs from projects that are either already up and running or will be soon. And that's tangible economic growth in our communities. And I wanted to make sure that that was part of the record, as these investments are on the chopping block in many respects. And they're on the chopping block to make room for tax cuts that we know disproportionately benefit corporations and the well-off. So I wanted to just put that into the record. But Secretary Wright, utilities across the country, including those in Wisconsin, have been making long-term plans for major grid investments based on the financing promised in the Inflation Reduction Act. They have spent years planning for and investing in transmission, energy production, and storage projects that will promote our energy independence and a resilient grid, all while lowering costs for Americans. And these funds have been, these promised funds have been frozen by the Trump administration. So what update do you have today for Wisconsin utilities and businesses that are waiting for these funds to be released so that they can start or continue building out their planned investments?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator Baldwin. We haven't actually frozen funds. Projects that are ongoing today, we're paying our bills. We are reaching out to all, please provide us. If you know of a partner that's done work and has unpaid bills, we'll get it paid. I'm aware of none of those.
We will follow up. On a related note, right now the United States is over 95% dependent upon China for battery-grade graphite. A Wisconsin-based company is working to commercialize a domestic bio-based alternative to battery-grade graphite, but is waiting for the Department of Energy to release funds that were announced, but that have now been paused. This administration continues to say that developing a domestic critical mineral supply chain is a top priority. But we are months into a funding freeze with no answers on the status of awards for programs like the Department of Energy's Critical Minerals Accelerator. With timely action from DOE, the company, Conovate, is committed to rapidly scaling this homegrown solution to address one of our most critical supply chain vulnerabilities. What is the timeline for getting the critical materials accelerator funding out the door?
Through this summer, we will review all of the major projects, and every one as it's done, we will reach out to that company. We're going to get information from them, feedback. You said they've been working for years on it. We'll hear their plans. We'll review their plans. Certainly, we want a domestic supply of graphite or other anode materials. 100%, that's in the wheelhouse. If it is a viable technology and a credible company with financing to do it, those are the kind of things we're absolutely looking to fund. But every one of them is sort of a project-by-project basis. It'll be a back and forth with that company in Wisconsin. And if that idea looks to...
With a footprint in South Carolina and Michigan also, I might add, so...
Now, look, myself and the administration are all in on resourcing manufacturing in the United States, and particularly in these critical areas where China dominates. So
and as this is looking forward to the 2026 budget, will the Critical Materials Accelerator program continue to be funded in the Department of Energy's budget, or are you planning to shut down our investments in domestic battery materials supply chain?
Well, I can't speak to any specific programs, but will we continue to invest in reshoring critical mineral supplies in the United States? 100%. That effort will go on.
Okay. Lastly, industry leaders in Wisconsin have made major gains in deploying commercial technologies that provide for domestic management of used nuclear fuel that is economical, safe, and sustainable. They're also using the same process to create medical-grade isotopes like Moly-99 that will help solve chronic shortages of these critical nuclear medicines. These industry leaders have had support from Congress and a successful partnership with the nuclear energy scientists at the Department of Energy to address this national security concern. Knowing this, will you consider reversing the proposed cuts to DOE's nuclear programs and invest in the development of a safer and more sustainable nuclear fuel cycle in your 2026 budget?
So we have cuts at different levels in different departments. We're not pulling back on our nuclear efforts at all. They may be funded slightly differently, but we're not pulling back on that. And what you specifically mentioned there, radioisotopes, it's one of the most exciting new thing in cancer treatment and imaging and all that.
And right now we resource them from reactors in Russia and in other countries. And we have that technology now developed here in the United States, in part for a long-term partnership with Department of Energy and spin-offs from research institutions across the country. I want to see that commitment kept up.
I'm sure we'll talk in a few weeks about, I've got to dig into that particular project, but definitely it's in a great spot.
Senator Hoeven,
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
talented Senator Hoeven.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Secretary, great to see you again, and great to have you. Are you enjoying the job? I know your background's all in the private sector. How's it going, and are you enjoying it?
It's thrilling. It's exciting. I've worked with a number of tremendous people, from our labs to inside our department, for the people sitting behind me. Yes.
Well, with your knowledge and
the ride of a lifetime.
Well, with your knowledge and expertise, it's just great having you in the position. We appreciate you doing it. I'm going to tell you something you know and then ask for your help. We need more base load, for AI and all these different purposes. We need more electricity, period. But for the stability of the grid and the reliability of the grid, we need more base load. So it's very important that we keep our coal-fired electricity online. We have the most advanced coal-fired electric industry in the world in North Dakota, which you've seen it. And we've addressed things like SOx and NOx and mercury. And now we're working on CO2 capture and sequestration. Now, it's technologically viable, we know that, but it's not commercially viable. And you've had some experience with this, and so have I. Because when you and I both started working on the shale play for oil and gas, it was technologically viable, it wasn't commercially viable. But we cracked the code, and it's been a boon for this country in energy. And the thing about the CO2 capture is our plants are fine for X number of years, but we know that to keep them long-term, we're going to have to address CO2 the way we would address SOx, NOx, and mercury and the other things. And it's a potential twofer in that we can take that CO2 and put it down hole, and we can double what we get out of the shale plays in terms of oil and gas. This is all stuff you know. Now, at the University of North Dakota, we have the Energy and Environmental Research Center that is a leader in developing and enhancing these technologies and actually commercializing them. And we need to continue that. So I guess I want to know that you're going to be willing to continue that partnership agreement with the Fossil Energy Office so we continue this development. And it includes not just the partnership agreement with the EERC and the DOE, but it also includes P-Corps so you can find these geological sites where you can sequester, and then also carbon safe, which is how we monitor it, so we know, that it's captured and it stays captured, and how much has been captured. So one, I'd like your help, or to know that you're going to continue to work with us on those programs. I want you to come out and see what we're doing, and so that seeing is believing. Although I know you're pretty well aware of it. And then I want your ideas on what else we can do to, again, crack the code here. So go from there, will you?
Thank you, Senator Hoeven. And yeah, I ran into John Harju in Oklahoma just a few weeks ago.
Great guy.
And I appreciate the great research that's been done there, and I certainly expect and hope that will continue in partnership with us. I'm going to be cautious about committing to anything specific because, again, we have a process we're going through. We've got a whole team. But should we continue to look into these technologies? Absolutely. As you said, with shale, we drove the cost curve down. Can you do that with other technologies? Yes. So technological research is of great interest. The value of CO2 to enhance oil recovery is I think, going to be a very large and growing issue in the next 20 years. So yes, these are areas of great interest. As with every technology and every business, the devil comes in the details, in the numbers, and what's the most effective ways to approach these things. You mentioned coal. Coal has been the largest source of global electricity for 100 years. It's almost certainly going to be for decades to come. So it is just a backbone of the global energy system. And if you look at states across the country that have the lowest cost and most reliable electricity grids, they tend to be skewed to have very coal-heavy grids.
Right, and we supply to a 12-state region, and if we develop this technology successfully, others will adopt it. And then, like I say, with the CO2, we've got the secondary oil recovery. Now, Senator Kennedy is going to try to tell you that all the smart guys are in Louisiana, and that's just not true. They got plenty of smart guys, including him. But we've got the experts at the EERC, and you know that. And the other thing is we're looking for your good ideas, too. I mean, your background, you figured this stuff out, and with your degrees and your training, we need your help on how to do that. And at the end of the day, this is about commercial viability. So I share Senator Kennedy's concerns about spending levels in government. We need to get the debt and deficit under control, but we grow our economy and create more revenue when we solve these challenges. And that's really your role at DOE is to help our private sector, empower our private sector to do these amazing, innovative things. So we need your ideas on how to crack this code.
Thank you, Senator. And I look forward to visiting EERC with you and sitting around and having these dialogues with the great scientists there. So
thanks again.
Thank you for the great comments.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Kennedy, Ranking Member Murray, Secretary Wright, good to be with you. I just want to briefly frame, as I understand it, the Department of Energy plays three critical overall functions: maintaining our national security through the Nuclear Security Administration, investing in critical public-private partnerships that will demonstrate and deploy the next generation of energy technologies, nuclear, geothermal, oil and gas, hydrogen, and funding research, both fundamental and applied at our national labs and through many great university partnerships that ensures we remain the global leader in R&D. These functions are critical to your three major goals that I share: out-competing China, reducing energy costs for Americans, and eliminating energy poverty across the world. And based on your background as an MIT-trained engineer and successful energy entrepreneur, I think you and I share these goals. But my core concern is that the way DOGE has impacted your workforce and the folks you've got available to carry these goals out undermine these critical goals. My understanding, and now I'm on a number of different appropriation subcommittees, and so far in every single one of them, we don't have a budget. Do you have a budget before us today, or is it a skinny budget?
So far, just the skinny budget. We're working with OMB to release more of that, but that's still a work in progress.
And it's awful skinny. I mean, it's about a page. So I'm working off of an outline, but I'm alarmed by a proposed cut of more than $1 billion to the Office of Science. That's more than 8% compared to enacted. At a time when China is investing in R&D and combined with what is going on at NSF, an independent agency, I'm concerned we're kneecapping the American science enterprise, which played such a critical role in our success in the 20th century. The skinny budget claims that your cut will only affect climate change and new green new scam research, but it doesn't define those terms, and I'm concerned we'll end up defunding critical research. The University of Delaware, my home state's leading research university, and many others in my state and around the country are alarmed by Executive Order 14222, which lowers the F&A caps on federal grants. How will your department implement this EO in a way that doesn't disproportionately impact R1 universities, but that are smaller and less well-researched than the handful of critical institutions that really have long demanded the lion's share of federal research dollars?
You're talking about the overhead percentage on
Yes.
things? When we sent it out, we invited all of the universities to reach back out to us to engage in a dialogue like I think you're proposing. So far, no one has taken us up on that effort.
Not one university has reached back out to you to say,
not
here's
that I-
how we would do it in a way that would minimize the impact?
Many sued us, but I'm
Many
not.
sued you.
But I'm not sure.
That's
I'm not.
one form of outreach.
I'm not aware of any dialogues on that. You know, and it is a sticky question, Senator Coons. And look, it's a great university, and I'm fully sympathetic of where you're coming from. And it's part of of course, it's part of this broader effort that we want to get. And going back to your national lab science question, that'll be done bottom up at every lab. I share that national labs are a treasure. We don't want to slow down any of our critical research, but is there some fat in there? Is there stuff we're working on that's not really basic science or critical to our energy thing? I think there is, and I haven't found a lab director yet that disagrees with me.
I have visited 4 of the national labs, been very impressed with them, look forward to continuing to support funding for them and engage with them, but I have 2 more questions, and I'll keep moving with my remaining minute.
You
if I
bet, you
might.
bet.
The bipartisan infrastructure law created hydrogen hubs and tasked DOE with implementing them, and I worked with bipartisan delegations from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, with unions, with universities, with our oil refineries, 3 of them, and we ultimately secured an award from DOE for the Mid-Atlantic Clean Hydrogen Hub. I want to thank you for sending the pre-award funding that was just received last week. Overall, this grant and leveraged private partnership would get $750 million in federal, $2 billion in leveraged private investment over a decade to create thousands of good-paying jobs. My concern is that the Hubs program is a key part of reindustrialization. And I legislatively helped create the Office of Clean Energy Demonstration, or OSED, in statute, and I'm concerned the workforce has been hollowed out and that they won't be able to actually implement this and other programs. There's others I could cite, the Loan Program Office, the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains, and others, with something like 4,000 DOE employees encouraged to retire or terminated. You've lost about 20% of your workforce. How can nuclear, we'll take nuclear, as an emerging critical American competitive technology be supported by the Loan Program Office when the House Reconciliation Bill would gut it and your budget zeroes it out? How does LPO function at the cutting edge of energy?
I think LPO is critical at the cutting edge of energy. It is really the most efficient tool we have in the department to help emerging energy technologies. So I absolutely want to see funding. I want to see the Loan Program Office able to lean in on emerging technologies. It is our greatest bang for the buck to help technologies. So, and I know that comes to the Senate next. I'm making a plea. I would very much.
Don't enact the budget we send, enact the budget you know we need. And we may end up, forgive me, just speaking for myself in the last 10 seconds, Mr. Chairman, we may end up saying you must have this many people here and this many people here and this many people here, because when certain functions get down to a handful of people, I'd love us to see that the LPO is actually able to meet the mission.
We will be able to
Senator
meet the mission.
Mikowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciated that exchange and a little bit of that candor. I appreciate that. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership. I know that folks in Alaska are looking forward to you heading north in a couple of weeks, along with Secretary Burgum and Administrator Zeldin, as well as a good handful of folks from our national labs. So it's a big deal. We appreciate it. I had a chance this morning to have Secretary Burgum before our Interior Appropriations Subcommittee, and well, he didn't outline some of the initiatives that may be unfolding when you are up there. I hope that you take the time to really get close to those that are making things happen on the ground. I know they're going to have some questions to you about the status of some of the programs through Department of Energy, and I hear what you're saying about you're not freezing anything, but there is review that's going on. I know one of the proposals that people are anxious about is the Carbon Safe Phase 3 up north. This is what they're working on the North Slope with regards to a carbon project that helps to facilitate and really enhance the build out of our oil operations up in the North Slope. So you'll be hearing those questions from folks, and I know you're going to be teed up on it. Along some of the same lines that Senator Coons was mentioning, just in terms of the ability to do the work that we expect within the different offices. You noted in your opening comments just the great innovation that we have seen in oil and gas and in coal, and how we're moving that forward. We've also seen that within the renewable energy space, and the EERE is looking at a cut here. You're going to have reductions in forces in that department. I reminded Secretary Burgum in a prior conversation that as rich as we are in our oil, in our gas, and in our coal, so many of our communities are so isolated. They will never, ever, ever be part of anybody's grid. And so the successes that we have seen with microgrids and how you take a little bit of wind and a little bit of solar and a little bit of, call it a run of river, or maybe you have some good storage. We are pioneering, we are imagineering in ways that people can't begin to appreciate. And some of the folks within your national labs have come up and seen it and remarked on it. So just know that we're looking at the cuts to EERE. I'm a little worried that perhaps things like microgrids get left behind. This will be the energy security for so many areas that have to figure it out on their own. They won't have the opportunity to plug into Alaska's natural gas. And so I'm putting that out there to you. I also wanted to raise the issue of the Office of Indian Energy. As you know, I'm the chairman of the Indian Affairs Committee, and we were successful in getting DOE's Office of Indian Energy Policy and Programs up off the ground and get the Tribal Energy Loan Guarantee Program going. I've been disappointed with how how it's struggled. Your skinny budget doesn't make any mention of the Office of Indian Energy or any of the projects that we're working on specifically to tribal energy development. Can you give me any review or oversight as to where you may be taking that?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. And as we know, we both share that passion for energy to remote communities, energy to disadvantaged peoples. I think that's a critical area of focus for business and for government. So I can't provide any more, department-wide thing in front of the budget that'll be released. But I think the things you mention are unique and they're specific, and those are things that make sense for us to work on. We have national labs that are working on these problems, new solar materials as well, getting remote energy, getting energy to communities that don't have good access to it, I think remains in the wheelhouse. There's a big percentage cut to EERE, but it's got a ginormous budget for everything it works on combined is a little over 3% of American energy, and it's received hundreds of billions of dollars of subsidies and had tax credits for 30 years. So, wins, big government dollars thrown at something that's main impact has been to make electricity more expensive and not add meaningfully to the global or national energy system. I don't think it's unreasonable to shrink that. You talk about specific applications, remote energy, that's different, right? That's different.
Well, and as you and I have discussed at some length, it's this issue of affordability and your very keen focus. It has to be, the energy has to be accessible, yes, but we've got to focus on the affordability place. Many people fail to appreciate, because we've got such extraordinary resources, that we pay some of the highest energy costs in the United States in our state. And so everything that we can do to find those unique, discrete energy solutions, and this is why we count on some of the really bright people around here to make it happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Strong, resilient grid is an important contributor to America's energy security, yes?
Yes.
In the bipartisan infrastructure law with strong bipartisan majorities, we established new efforts to support state governments and utilities at upgrading their grids to make them more resilient, more reliable, and more efficient. And in 2023, the state of Georgia was awarded $250 million to implement in partnership with 3 utilities, Oglethorpe Power, Georgia Transmission, and Georgia System Operations, grid upgrades across the state. Each dollar, by the way, matched by these utilities. Private skin in the game as well. And this is especially important in rural Georgia. Just to paint the picture for you, after the storm last fall, Hurricane Helene, the outages lasted for weeks and weeks and weeks. There wasn't the manpower or the capacity to repair all the damage. There's a real need for grid upgrades in Georgia. And these funds have been obligated, but I understand are now in a state of limbo, pending review, additional questions being asked, driving some significant uncertainty in Georgia because, A, my constituents want a world-class upgraded energy grid, and B, these private companies have already themselves committed tens of millions of dollars of capital to this project. So where does that stand, and when will we have an answer on whether those funds, which again have already been obligated and are part of a bipartisan piece of legislation, are indeed going to be headed to Georgia?
Yeah, Senator Ossoff, thank you for your question and your comments. I agree. Grid stability, and do we have challenges there? Absolutely. Is there work to be done there? Absolutely. I don't think you were here when I first laid out the reason. One of the reasons we're doing these very careful reviews was it's a similar story for the grants as the Loan Program Office, but I'll give the numbers from the Loan Program Office. It extended $43 billion of credit in the 15 years it existed as an office. And then in the 76 days after the election last November.
This is not an LPO.
It's the same thing for the. It's the same thing on the other side. I'll just say it this way then. Of those grants that you're talking about, those commitments that have been made, more money was committed in the 76 days from election.
Forgive me, Mr. Secretary, but my time is limited, and the question is when my constituents will have an answer.
This summer. We put together a team, a process. We're engaging with the lenders, and we're running through them. And everyone that's viable, it's going to help the community of Georgia. It's financially viable. Those are the things that'll go forward.
This again, bipartisan legislation, grid upgrades, bipartisan support in Georgia, award to the state of Georgia, private investment to accompany it, clear unmet need. Let's have a follow-up conversation about how we can expedite consideration of that, because there's just tremendous uncertainty that has been created by this insistence on a grant by grant by grant, loan by loan by loan scrubbing of everything against ideological criteria at OMB. And I understand that you want to make sure that public dollars are well used, but these are obligated funds that were appropriated on a bipartisan basis in Congress. I want to raise one more key Georgia concern with you. Are you familiar with the Bluebird Corporation? Most famous school bus in the world.
Okay.
Bluebird, made in Georgia. We're proud of it.
And so I recognize the name, but no, not, okay, made in Georgia.
And there is growing demand from local school districts for electric school buses for all kinds of good reasons. And the Bluebird Corporation wants to get in on this and be able to meet that market demand. They've invested $80 million of private capital to retool an aging manufacturing facility to produce those electric school buses. That was matched by an $80 million federal grant from the Department of Energy. And similarly, and again, I frankly don't have time, with all due respect, for the big picture on what you're doing and why you're doing it. I sort of understand the talking points on that. What I want to convey to you is how important this is to Middle Georgia. This is one of the most storied and successful companies in Georgia history. When this grant was awarded, the Peach County Industrial Development Authority called it an awesome win for our community. Fort Valley Mayor Jeffrey Lundy said it's celebration day. Got a quote from a councilman here who said that when Bluebird goes up, Fort Valley goes up. When Bluebird goes down, Fort Valley goes down. And again, we've got private capital that's been hazarded, that's been invested, an expectation, a lot of commercial decisions that have been made, assuming the federal government will make good on its commitments for funds it has obligated. When can Bluebird expect an answer?
This summer, I think, is the time frame that we'll get
This
through
summer
all
like
of the things.
June, this summer like July, this summer like August?
I can't get you that date right now, but it'll be done this summer.
And you understand, Mr. Secretary, the cost of prolonged uncertainty, especially for these private companies, yes?
I do, and if you reviewed the portfolio of things I've looked at that don't check the boxes you talked about, you'd understand why I can't just send out hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money to bridges
I'm asking
to
you to
nowhere.
make good on obligations that have already been made to the state of Georgia. We'll follow up on this directly as well. Thank you so much.
Senator Haggard.
I want to thank you, Chairman Kennedy, Vice Chair Murray, for holding this meeting. And Secretary Wright, it's wonderful to see you here. I've enjoyed getting to know you, and I'm so pleased that someone with your expertise and background is playing the role that you are for our nation. You and I have discussed this before, but the United States is at a pivotal moment in energy production. It's not just for our nation. It's for the entire world. And but before I go on, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you for coming to visit my home state of Tennessee just days after you were confirmed as U.S. Secretary of Energy. I was pleased to be there with you in East Tennessee. And I think you know Tennessee has been at the forefront of what you've called yourself as the Manhattan Project 2.0. And I was very pleased to introduce you there and to talk about how we can leverage the deep technological expertise that we have there in our home state as you take this department and lead our nation toward a new energy future. I think if we look toward the critical advancements in artificial intelligence and quantum computing, advanced manufacturing, they will define the 21st century. And all of these technologies require massive amounts of energy to succeed. So you are really at the cusp of what it's going to take for our nation to remain at the forefront and create the competitive advantage necessary for us to dominate future technologies. It's going to take strong leadership in energy. And if we fail, I think the U.S. really risks ceding ground to adversaries like the Chinese Communist Party. But I really believe that, as you've described, that America is at the threshold of an American golden age in energy, and that revolution is going to happen with your leadership. I'd like to turn to a specific point that we discussed, that's small modular reactors. And they're widely seen as the future of nuclear technology because they address the biggest challenges that have held back traditional nuclear power. And by that I mean specifically cost, scale, flexibility, time to deployment. Tennessee right now has the nation's only early permit for an SMR. And just yesterday, the Tennessee Valley Authority submitted their construction permit application to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And as we explore SMR deployment at the Clinch River site and through partnership with the Oak Ridge National Lab, I'm very hopeful that Tennessee can become the catalyst for the United States' nuclear energy resurgence. But if we could zoom out a bit Secretary Wright. I'd like to ask you how you see nuclear energy, particularly SMRs, playing a central role in advancing and achieving American energy dominance and grid reliability over the next decade.
Oh, I think it's critical, Senator. As you and I have discussed before, it is the critical technology that could scale wildly beyond where it is today, which is just electricity production, into huge scale electricity production and process heat, an even larger, more critical source of energy to make everything in the globe possible. So I am all in with you on advancing nuclear. If I can give an analogy, Senator Hagerty, you talked about the stress. We need a lot more energy to meet this AI challenge. Yeah. To give an analogy, imagine if the military, the Department of the Defense, set out a quote to the defense companies and said, we want to buy tanks. We'll pay full price for high-performance tanks, but you can deliver us a tank that only moves some of the time, maybe when the sun's shining, and it only will shoot maybe when the wind's blowing. And so it's an underperforming tank, but we'll pay you full price for it. And further, we'll give you a subsidy to build the factory to build these tanks. So what do you think is going to happen, right? You're going to get paid to deliver an inferior tank. Subsidy, of course, you're going to do it. And then what happens to your Army? It's not just the poor kids that are in those tanks. It's the kids that are in all the other tanks that now have underperforming partners in the battle. They're at risk. That's what we've done to our electricity grid. We've burdened nuclear and natural gas and all our dispatchable energy sources with an unreliable, turns on sometime, turns off the other time, not there when you need it at peak demand, but yet we pay it the same price and we subsidize the development of it. It's not only made the grid more expensive, it's hampered the advancement of dispatchable energy technologies. Nuclear is the one that could burst through. But we need to fix some problems.
To stay on this, I know you've thought this through, but what steps is your department taking then regarding SMRs to deal with regulatory hurdles, the financial hurdles, the technological hurdles that may be in the way of further SMR, more rapid SMR development?
Specifically in our purview, we've offered up DOE lands for test and demonstration projects. Come do it on our land. We're building test facilities at the Idaho National Lab so you can bring your reactor and test it in a containment dome that's on DOE thing. Just through normal processes, this stuff just happens just deathly slow. And then I'm very passionate about wanting to use the loan program office because the developer of these reactors are going to be grade A credit, hyperscalers that are buying the power or other things. But there's just not debt capital for these new reactors. I want to get grade A equity capital. I want to match it with LPO debt to get shovels in the ground and start building these reactors. Because as we build them, the costs will come down, the reliability, they'll be commercially bankable. We'll get to a great place. But relaunching the nuclear industry is not going to be trivial. And your efforts, and I hope the DOE efforts, it's going to take all of us to make it happen. But huge upside for all of us if we do it.
Well, I think of you members of this committee as your partners in that regard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Peters.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Wright, just this past weekend, severe storms knocked out power for over 150,000 Michiganders in West Michigan. This comes only literally a few short weeks after an ice storm left as many as 300,000 people without power across northern Michigan, as well as a large part of our Upper Peninsula. Events like these, as you know as well, are becoming too common, especially in Michigan, but all across the country. So I think it's very clear that power infrastructure is in dire need of upgrades, particularly resiliency, given the fact that storms are coming at greater frequency and are more severe than we've seen in the past. So simply put, we just have to invest in the grid. Actually, this is something that I think we all agree on in a bipartisan way. And believe it or not, even here in Congress, we've come together to agree on that. I think it's one of the few things, and it was part of the infrastructure law that we passed, that we allocated much needed funding on a bipartisan basis to address grid resilience nationwide. But from what I'm hearing in my state, and this is my concern, the Department of Energy has been unwilling to communicate with grant selectees or allow this funding out the door to let them start this critical work, especially as people are out of power. The frustration is they call, they basically get no answer, no response whatsoever. You've basically gone dark, and that's incredibly disappointing given folks are living in the dark, and then you're dark in terms of even trying to come back with any kind of answer. So I just want to, all I want to know is why. I don't want to hear that it's because you're reviewing everything all over again, because right now the Department of Energy is sitting on their hands, and there are folks in my state that are still waiting literally for the lights to come back on. So please tell me what has kept the Department of Energy under your watch from simply communicating with those selected to receive these grid resilience grants, and when do you expect to be dispersing funds so that these projects can get underway?
Well, I'd love the phone numbers because I'm not aware of any unreturned phone calls. So if you've got companies in your thing, please, you can hand me the phone numbers right now. We'll call them today. So we are engaged with all the counterparties on our deals that are going on. We're gathering information, we're gathering data, we're communicating for things that are already awarded and work is in progress. We're paying our bills. We are getting a little bit of additional information from companies because the vast majority of the counterparties never delivered a business plan, never delivered something credible, but yet they were given a vague promise of funding. We've continued to fund the things that are in place, but there's clearly been an abuse of tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money. And I want to make sure that when we're sending money to someone, there really is a business on the other end. They're really going to have a product that's viable at the end, and that product's going to benefit the American taxpayers at the end. We're all for those things. Grid reliability is right in the wheelhouse. So I think, there's been all sorts of things about how we've canceled everything. They're just not true.
Well, I'm hearing that, so I will take you up on that offer.
Yes.
Let us know. Our team will follow up with your team. I appreciate your commitment to make those calls. I can tell you at least the ones that have come to me are very credible institutions and companies. And so there is a real problem there, and it raises a real alarm for me. So I appreciate your willingness to get on the phone or get whoever you have to get on the phone, and we'll follow up later today or tomorrow.
Thanks for raising that. We absolutely want to connect that. I can assure you no one at the DOE is sitting on their hands and just ignoring people's phone calls. That's just not the way we roll.
Well, good. Let's get to the bottom of that. I see the president's budget calls for the cancellation of over $15 billion of bipartisan infrastructure funding. And in there's a brief description accompanying that cut, the $15 billion cut, mentioning, quote, battery makers, end of quote. That makes me think you're referring to the Battery Manufacturing and Recycling Grants Program or the Battery Materials Processing Grant Program. If so, I hope you know that could mean hundreds of good-paying jobs that are going on in Michigan right now, a lot of incredible work in batteries. In fact, there was a recent announcement you may have seen from General Motors that new battery chemistry they're announcing with incredibly longer range, lightweight, uses less critical minerals, exciting things that are happening. So to see this is concerning. So I want to know, is that what the president's skinny budget sets out to do, zero out the Battery Manufacturing and Recycling Grants Program and the Battery Materials Processing Grants Program? And if so, should I take that to mean that domestic manufacturing is not a priority for the administration?
Domestic manufacturing is absolutely a priority for the administration. Absolutely. Let me one clarification too. Sorry, not provided there. That $15 billion you mentioned right there. None of that is committed to any company. There is no counterparty on that. That's just non-placed funds.
So it's not going to be cut. We're here
that is not cuts to any
existing. President's budget
awardees.
calls for the cancellation of over $15 billion. So
because it's been unallocated, it hasn't been committed to anyone, and their proposed budget is to rescind it back to the Treasury.
So it is coming. It's not coming back. It's gone. That money's going to be rescinded back.
Yes, that is the proposed budget. But it's not for any existing current projects.
Well, we'll follow up with you on that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Senator.
Senator Merkley.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If I understand right, you said you have not met a single nuclear company that is, hold on 1 minute. Though I have all those over 60 sometimes have a little technical problem, that is talking about the importance of public funding. Is that right?
Wait, say it again. Sorry, Senator Merkley.
That you said you have not met a single nuclear company that is talking about the importance of public funding?
No, I think I may have been unclear, but what I responded to was I don't know of any nuclear company that said to me or anyone in our department, hey, you're pulling back, we're less likely to invest. I've been talking to everyone who will listen and everyone who visits about how we can work with nuclear companies to get things going, to help their project in all different avenues. In fact, I think we've been called the most constructive administration with the nuclear industry ever.
Yeah, so I just wanted, if that had been your statement, it seemed out of sync with the fact that just this month, the state of the nuclear energy industry was one of the platforms that was hyper-focused on federal policies and programs that expand nuclear generation, an event that you had attended, so that does fit then.
I've attended a number of nuclear events. One of them was yesterday or the day before. Is that the event you're talking about?
Well, I was just trying to clarify, because I think maybe the way it came out of maybe you had phrased it didn't seem consistent with the record, but I think you've clarified it. Thank you. So, and I know, for example, one company that was founded in Oregon has really advocated for public funding for the SMR, the NuScale company, and they've got a lot of funding over time to help them get through the nuclear regulatory process. Turning to the challenge in my state, I have a small school district in Mosier, a tiny town in the Columbia Gorge that has a 100-year-old building, and they got a grant to be able to redo their HVAC system. And they were very excited. It was actually a small school, often doesn't have a grant writer. They didn't have a grant writer. The parent of one of the students wrote the grant, so for them to be one of only 24 schools that got this was like a whopping big deal of celebration. You can imagine the problems with a 100-year-old school, asbestos and so on and so forth. And so then with the change of administration, they were first told that the funds were frozen, and then they were told they're not frozen, but they then couldn't reach a point of contact on how to proceed. And I know you've let go a lot of staff, but so there was no way to, like, how do we go forward? And then they proceeded to hear that, okay, they did reach a contact, and they were told that a final decision hasn't been made yet. And then they were told that they have to get DOE to approve their contractors. And so it's like one step to another of just a complete bureaucratic nightmare over the last 3 months. And can you have your team get these contractors approved and let this school get their project done?
Senator, absolutely. Well, we will check into that right away. You know, we're here to serve the communities and serve the businesses of the country. So I'm not familiar with this story, but if you've marked, hopefully one of my staff has written down the name of the school, and we'll dive onto it.
And we'll get you a whole page on it.
Thank you.
Because the contractor was ready to go. The school that didn't have much money has already done upfront costs. Are just hanging out there, and it's a mess. And one of your staff members can hopefully, like, okay, done. You've got a responsible contractor. You're free to go for it. A second, in Frontier, Oregon, which is the term we use for even more rural than rural, we have a grant school district. It's a school district that includes John Day, a town that just lost its lumber mill, one that Senator Wyden and I had strived for years and years to keep open through a special agreement for the delivery of logs. Unfortunately, the owner wants to retire. They're tied up trying to figure out the transition. But here's the school district, and it is also stuck in kind of a crazy space. So without taking up your time with all the details, Grant County School District, the school district, can we get someone on your team to work with them to clear this up and let them, it's also an HVAC issue.
Yes, Senator, thanks for raising that. Thanks for raising that. Sorry for their experiences.
So I wanted to turn to Bonneville Power Authority. Bonneville controls dozens of dams, huge amount of electricity. They have to integrate wind energy, solar energy. Meanwhile, in the Columbia River, they got the challenge of enough water for the barges to take the wheat to market. They got a challenge of the salmon. I mean, it's one of the most complicated. Am I past 5 minutes already?
No, but that's okay.
Can you give me
Everybody else is
another
going
moment?
over. You go ahead and go over too.
All right, thank you. So they had a bunch of people fired who were probationary, and we said, oh man, this is such a complicated area, and they need these employees, and some of them, I think 80 were rehired, but we haven't gotten exact numbers. but then we lost 200 in the first buyout. Another 160 have taken the second buyout. Maybe that you haven't approved those yet. Here's the thing. This is such a complicated system. We were really stunned by this whole initial firings and the first buyout, because these are really experienced people doing really complicated systems. And so was there careful analysis beforehand of the challenges they would face with the strategy of the buyouts?
With the buyouts, we have a clause that we need to approve them, and I think we've tried not to approve any in the power marketing administrations because they were shorthanded when we arrived in this administration in. So they've been voluntary programs. We have not. They should not have been even extended the offer. They were probably extended the offer the second go round, but the hope is not to lose more people from there.
Well, I was surprised in the hearing last week with Dan Newhouse that your response was you had just recently heard about their shortage. And this is such a complicated system. I encourage any strategies of buyouts or firings to do the analysis up front, especially when so many experienced people are needed to keep the grid functioning and the water level right and the salmon rules followed and et cetera. In such a system.
The dams are critical. Bonneville is critical. I agree, Senator.
Thank you. And by the way, they're still under a federal hiring freeze, which is handicapping their ability to fill in the expertise that they need to replace the people who took the first buyout.
We will look into that.
Thank you.
We will look into that.
Senator Murray, do you have anything else?
I just have a couple comments. You have heard from my side, one after the other, of contracts that were canceled or frozen. These are real. You said no grants are frozen, no invoices unpaid. I don't know if you're not paying attention or you haven't seen it, but I just want to remind you, it is illegal to ignore the clear directions of Congress. These are programs, spending bills that we passed through this committee. They were signed into law, and if you're canceling them or freezing them or whatever, that is impoundment, and it is illegal. And I don't raise that concern lightly. I am deeply concerned, and we are hearing the same stories over and over again. I do have a list. You said you hadn't seen any. I will submit it for the record of canceled and frozen grants. These are just a handful that we know about. So we expect your office to follow through and to do it quickly. Secondly, on the CR spend plan, that was required within 45 days. That's by law. Your department still has not given that to us. And again, I don't raise this lightly. This committee, all of our committees, need to know where that money is going, where it's being spent. Hanford site is on the brink of having to lay off subcontractors and restart an entire procurement process on an important project because they are being directed now to hold off on implementing projects at FY25 spend levels. So this is not efficient, and Congress requires that, and we need those fixed. So that is really critical, and we expect a real response, not, a nice little phrase. And finally, on communication, you've heard it from several people. I appreciate that you're telling everybody, call my office, we'll call you back. But two-way communication is two-way communication. You had told me you'd pick up the phone whenever, but we're not getting calls back. People are not getting calls back, and I think it's really important that that you know that. I know you told some people that you were too busy, but you told me to call whenever. I have tried to get in touch with you. It took us a month and a half to get a call scheduled. So communication is not, someday I'll call you back. It's unacceptable, and I do want to enter 7 letters into the record that I have sent with colleagues over the past several months requesting information about what is going on at DOE. Radio silence until yesterday. That was convenient. So we need to get responses back to those letters, and I want to be on record saying that communication is not ignoring us. Again, thank you very much for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to we got a lot of work ahead of us.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Secretary, I want to go back to some of your earlier testimony, be sure I heard it correctly. The 76-day period you're talking about, that's the period between the time that President Trump was elected and President Biden left office. Is that right?
That is correct.
And during that short period of time, 76 days, how much taxpayer money went out the door of the Department of Energy?
From the Loan Program Office in loans and commitments, $93 billion. Well over twice as much as in the previous 15 years. So,
How do you vet and do due diligence on a loan in 76 days? One loan, much less $93 billion. How do you do it?
I think it's probably pretty clear it wasn't done in many cases. As I mentioned, I'm told I'm holding back clearly in place stuff. There is lots of funds that have gone out the door and commitments that were made from businesses that provided no business plan, no numbers about their own financial solvency or how this project
So
can
you're
actually
telling
work.
me that the Department of Energy, in the 76-day period, before their boss was going to leave office, gave or loaned money to entities that had no business plan,
Correct.
no financials?
Correct. A number of those were were before the 76-day period as well. I've come in with great concern about how this institution, this great American institution, has been run and how American taxpayer money has been handled. I'm sorry everyone's upset that we're taking some time to do it, but what we've seen and what the record shows
I'm
is
not
just
upset. Could it be
irresponsible.
that a lot of people say you haven't returned your calls? Could it be that you and your colleagues have returned the calls, but the people calling just didn't like the answer? Could that be a possibility?
I'm not aware of that. You know, I give my cell phone number to any senator that
I know
wants
you
it,
do.
and I return my calls.
I mean, has your department gone dark? Somebody said your department's gone dark. Is it dark over there?
It doesn't look dark behind me.
I don't see any of you sitting on your hands. Somebody made that charge. I see everybody's hands. Let me ask you something else, Mr. Secretary. Does anybody ever come to the Department of Energy to get some of this free money and lie to you?
I have not experienced that, but I think it's a reasonable assumption that that has happened.
Does anybody ever come to you, or is it conceivable that some of these folks that heard about this free money came to you with a half-baked idea?
I think it's very conceivable. In fact, I've seen such plans that were
You've seen
half-baked would be
plans
charitable.
that didn't have a business plan, right?
Correct. A promise to develop one, to find a location.
Just give me the
to-
money and I'll develop the plan later.
Correct.
And now you're going back through, not money that's already been contracted, but you're going back through and checking each one of these loans and these grants to make sure there was no stealing, aren't you?
We are.
And
We
you
are.
make sure there was no incompetence, aren't you? Is that correct?
We're looking at that, and yeah, my blood pressure is rising right now just thinking about what we have seen and what did happen at the department.
And you're going to tell some of these boondoggles no, aren't you?
That's correct.
And they're going to be upset, aren't they?
That's correct.
And they ought to be upset, shouldn't they?
I don't think they should be upset. I think they should be ashamed.
It's rare that I'm speechless. But I want to be sure I understood. The people running the Department of Energy for President Biden's administration shoveled $93 billion, not million, $93 billion out the door in 76 days, and it just happened to be the time between when President Trump was elected and President Biden, their boss, was leaving. Is that right?
It is correct and distasteful. Confidence undermining.
My God. Look, I hope you take whatever time you need to go through all of these projects penny by penny. I mean, I've heard this testimony today. Well, it'll cost jobs in my state. If somebody steals $50 million and goes and spends the money in their state, that's going to stimulate the economy, isn't it?
Yes, it will.
But that's still stealing, isn't it? And it's still illegal, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, they were spending money at the Department of Energy like it was ditch water. Their budget went from $60 billion to $160 billion since fiscal year 2021. It just sounds to me like there were a lot of people coming to the Department of Energy who had all 4 feet and their snout in the trough. And I hope you'll turn down the boondoggles and refer the thieves to the Department of Justice.
We will indeed. Senator, the one complication in there, too, is mixed in there are good companies doing good things honestly with credible plans.
And you're trying to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do. That's our job, and we're doing it. But there's a lot of chaff.
Let me ask you one final question. Let me go back to how many employees you have. Now, there have been some allegations today that you've cut tens of thousands of employees. Is that accurate?
Well, I think the allegations were thousands, and our head count will ultimately be reduced by thousands, but we are doing it slowly.
You've got 16,000 now?
Yes.
And you think you can do it with fewer than 16,000?
Correct.
What's wrong with that?
I think it's just common sense business.
Yeah. Businesses do it every day in the real world.
American taxpayers deserve it.
That's never happened in the federal government. I mean, it's easier to divorce your spouse than to get rid of a federal employee up here. That's not the way the world works, is it, Mr. Secretary?
It's not the way the world should work. And I give enormous credit to President Trump, who had the boldness to say, if there's a right thing that needs to be done and it's difficult, please do it. And so, yes, this is new territory. This is not what happens normally in the federal government, but it is what needs to happen periodically in the federal government. And I give the credit to President Trump, who's willing to take the heat and has set the departments free. Make the changes you need to make to better serve American taxpayers and American consumers. And across his administration, that's what's being done.
All right. On that note, I just wanted to clear that up, Mr. Secretary, because I don't know you to be a person who doesn't return his phone calls or take care of business. And my guess is you don't tolerate people around you who take a cavalier approach to their job. And I wanted to get that on the record. I applaud you for being able to do the job with fewer people. Thank you for being here today. Thank you to all of your staff. Y'all can't take the rest of the day off. It's still the hearing record's going to remain open for a week. Some senators may send you additional questions. They might submit additional information for the record within that time. It's their prerogative. If they have questions, I hope you'll try to answer them in a reasonable amount of time. I want to thank you for being here today, and the subcommittee will now stand adjourned.
Thank you, Senator, and the committee. Thank you.